While I was doing a torso anatomy study, I kept forgetting my steps and getting confused. So I figured I'd quickly talk about how I plan to study anatomy with a budget of $0, from resources, what practices with which restrictions, etc., in hopes that it'll act as a guide for both me and others that are interested. Step 0. Preparation. Here you have to separate the body parts into sections and pick one. The reason is to avoid overwhelm and make sure nothing goes glossed over. How to separate it probably seems like common sense, but I separated it a bit weirdly. My separation is more joint and motion focused. Unfortunately, body parts are connected, so this had an even weirder result. I'll talk about it more in the study vlogs. I recommend going from the head to toe order to avoid further confusion, but if you don't mind that, feel free to go in any order. I myself am going in the order of what I like the least. Step 1. Get information. Just like you do studying anything else, I start with getting the formal information. Well, I guess I took an unconventional route. I mainly watch videos that utilize 3D or 2D graphics from channels I can differentiate whether they are operated by people in medicine or gym nerds. I stop the video at times to note down the muscles and what they do. Even though there isn't anything wrong with drawing all the muscles together, I still recommend drawing them all separated at least once, so you know exactly what their shapes and connection points are. However, depending on the resource you picked, you might find that they don't have enough information for that. If the video doesn't have clear enough graphics, I get help from these apps. One of them only has the bones, while the other has everything from the skeletal system to the tiniest details of the body you will never need to learn about as an artist, because it is an all-round medical resource. But their skeletal system model looks a bit ugly, so I decided to stick with the other app for the bones. BioDigital has paid services, but it's only for saving more than 5 models, and you only need to save the models for faster or offline access. You can still use the search bar and view any model you want after saving the basic muscle and skeletal models. It's probably the biggest and the best anatomy resource you will find for free. Recently, I also found out that they have animated models. These will come in so handy down the line with the exercises I will list out. As with all 3D models, if you have a potato device like me, you might struggle a little bit. I found that downloading the app itself elevates some of that problem. If you use the medical resources, although most are pretty easy to spot, it might be hard to discern whether a specific muscle is actually superficial at times. A quick trick I like is to search up how to train muscle workout. Usually, if it doesn't affect the outside look, all you'll get is pain relief stuff. Step 2. Draw from reference. The title is descriptive enough. Here, you'll just take real-life photos and fit the internal structure you just learned about inside it. You can draw over the photos too to save some time if you're confident with your observational drawing, but I'm realizing it might still be better to draw it all even then. The main goals of this step are: see how the internal structure affects the outside look. Make sure there's not a single blind spot in your understanding of how things look and where they connect. Become more familiar with the information in an easier way before jumping right into harder practices. When you get confused, you can go back to the notes you took or the 3D models to examine the anatomy in detail and come back to drawing more. My estimate is that you should do between 15 to 30 of these, but as always, everyone is different. The moving on criteria here is being comfortable in your understanding of the information. Theory, even though you probably aren't going to be able to draw it however you want just yet. Practicality. I usually get the photos with basic Google or Pinterest searches. However, all search engines nowadays are broken, so here is a site that I change into. You can search by muscles as well. I try to pick a good variety of poses. Step 3. Condensed guide. Now that your understanding of a theory is supposed to have grounded, it's time to summarize. Draw yourself a diagram of the body part to use as a reference. Yes, you can always pull one out from Google search, but drawing it yourself will help test whether you actually grounded the theory, and go back and examine more if you haven't. The diagram needs to be clear and simple, show the connection points, show the level hierarchy, have size measurements, and obviously have the muscle names for future reference and search. You don't need to memorize names if you aren't planning to be frequently communicating about them. You can also note down the functions of the muscles if you'd like. You should also have an idea of a base construction method of your own by this point. This will be modified later during practice as you see fit, but it will serve as a starting point. If you'd rather follow a professional's already proven construction method, it's going to cost you a couple bucks, but the construction in the book Anatomy for Artists by Tom Fox probably fits the exercise I will list out in a minute the best. I don't use the book nor own it myself, so you definitely do not need it. But I've seen a few snippets online, and if that's what you want, I suggest checking it out. Step 4. Practice. During the actual practice, what we are going to do is use the guide we just made as a reference and drop it inside these boxes. Now, before you click off, I'm fully aware that this amount of repetition might be too boring, too time-consuming, or even not needed for other people. So here are a few selections you can choose from. One is simply getting rid of the in-betweens. A second one is this plus shape, and another one is this stair. You can also come up with your own selection of boxes or mix and match these. However, one thing to keep in mind is that for the head, neck, torso, and the pelvis, you need to rotate them 180 degrees, while the rest need 360. The goal of this practice is not to memorize it from every angle, but to understand and internalize the theory in its practicality, so don't be afraid to make mistakes or have them look bad. It can be further dumbed down to drawing it in different positions, but I don't trust my brain to have good enough RNG, so I decided to use these boxes to make sure I'm practicing enough variety, and not drawing the same 5 angles. You will also have memorized the information thanks to sheer repetition, so that's another plus. Another thing the sheer repetition brings is getting bored. Usually for me this results in extra experimentation and simplifying. So you slowly start playing around with the actual application and all that good stuff. I don't know if all these weird words make sense if they are used in casual speech. I recommend utilizing contour lines to practice the forms more. I usually forget about this one, but there will very commonly be areas of the body where there isn't much to draw. There are subtle form changes that can be communicated with contour lines. For example, during the feet study there came a point where the rotated feet didn't have much changes that represented itself with basic drawing. But if I drew the contour lines, I would have had more practice with the form and gotten way more out of this practice. Step 5. Range of motion. Since we won't just be drawing people T-posing all the time, we need to learn about the range of motion. In this step, I simply note down the diagrams or the references. This is usually present in the videos, but if not, you can search body part range of motion on Google or YouTube to find more. There are some physiotherapy videos on YouTube that feature real people, which is a big help too. And the best resource you'll find regarding this is yet again biodigital. Search up the part you're learning about or just movement for a generalized search, and make sure to filter by the tag animated. If the diagrams and the live videos weren't enough, you can watch these animations. Again, not to memorize, but to understand what really happens during these movements. I'm really glad to have found this because I wasted so much time trying to find similar muscle animations on YouTube, and sometimes left with my hands empty. Step 6. Free sketch. In this step, you just combine everything you learned up to this point and sketch freely. It's kind of for practicing the drums. This is more of a chill exercise, so you can just do any amount you like until you get bored or something. And do a few pages. If you start getting stuck with ideas, you could just pick a few boxes to draw with. There's no need to do any particular set of them. And this concludes the learning part. Now is the time for the exams. Exam 1. Turnaround. There's not much to explain about it. You just make a simple turnaround animation of the subject matter, using no references except maybe the guides you made if you really need it. This one is kind of for flex purposes. It was the first thing I thought of, and since then I realized that it doesn't showcase anything except your patience to go back and forth, making everything consistent. But I still do them because they look cool. However, this can be a really good exam if there's a specific angle you used to struggle with. For example, I had a lot of trouble with drawing feet from the bottom of view, so doing a turnaround from that angle actually served as a good exam. Exam 2. Range of motion animation. Here, the task is to animate the range of motion of the subject matter, again with no references except the guides you made. I called it an animation, but there is no need for timing or gesture. Think of a very simple and steady motion like the ones from those physiotherapy videos or the biodigital animations. Just focus on making it consistent and correct. Doesn't take that many frames for just decent fluidity, but the consistent part is what takes a lot of time. I recommend picking an angle that clearly shows the motion instead of a straight on or a side view that could make it unnecessarily frustrating and also result in a less than desirable look. I really suggest doing it even if you don't animate and have no plans to, unless again you for some reason plan to only draw still bodies, because it's kind of an exam practice hybrid. Since there's less lenience on making mistakes and moving on regardless, I put these in the exam part. If you study on paper, it might be more complicated to do this, so you can be more relaxed in that regard and also draw them side by side instead of a sequence. And for the last and actual exam, we are going to have many options depending on what type of art you do. The restriction for all of them is only having your own guides as a reference. Exam 3. Application. First one is obviously a polished piece revolving around the subject matter. This is for if you paint or illustrate. And I'll take this time to apologize for not finishing this one despite promising to. My iPad keeps lagging, so all the ha-has left my soul. The second one is a sketch page. It's going to be a sketch page that's on the polished side as well. It just won't have any story or composition, just a bunch of drawings of the subject matter squished into one page or however many as you'd like. You'll paint these or only draw and focus on the gesture and expression while making it still polished. And the third one is an actual animation revolving around the subject matter. Unlike the animation from before, this needs to heavily incorporate the animation principles. This is probably the one I should be doing, but I'm too scared to attempt it. I feel like I'd need to do more beginner animation exercises before these, but I probably need to suck it up and do it anyway. And with that, the anatomy study plan is over. Now I'll talk about a few things that probably should have been in the intro, but I didn't want to bore people. The prerequisites to this study plan are 1. Intermediate observational drawing skills. 2. Beginner understanding of complex forms in perspective. And the goal of this study plan is to draw humans from imagination. I've seen some discourse about how we don't draw from imagination, we draw from memory. I don't really buy into that. Obviously, our imagination pulls from what we have already seen or have experienced, but that doesn't make it not imagination. Unless you are trying to remember a specific memory and draw that, you're drawing from imagination. I've also seen some people say that learning anatomy will improve your observational drawing skills too, but I don't fully agree with that either. I think what happens is that learning anatomy helps make up for what you can't observe at the moment. It shouldn't improve your observational drawings except the result of just having drawn more. Basically, what I'm trying to say is, you already know the 3D by living. You should learn the 2D up to an intermediate level where you're comfortable with it. And you should have a general understanding of how 3D is represented in 2D, even if you can't perfectly or comfortably execute it yet. And this is my own study plan. You can pick it apart, get rid of steps, or add more. Ignore restrictions or again add more. Feel free to just think of this as a glance into someone else's life. You can take away what you like and leave the rest for me to enjoy.